Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. This week, back on the Firebird, doing everybody's favorite bodywork. So grab your popcorn, let's get started. Now, let me start off by saying that I don't know what percentage, but my bodywork techniques are really just going to irritate probably 10 to 20% of you. There's on the other spectrum, probably 10 or 20% of you don't have a clue what I'm doing. And that's okay. You know, everybody has their own techniques. Everybody has their own way of doing things. Just like me, I've got my own way of doing things. But let's do a quick breakdown real quick on how the bodywork prior to actual painting the car, the way I'm going to do it is going to commence. So let's start off with setting goals. What do you want the final paint job to look like? In my case, what do I want the final paint job to look like? I want it to look flawless. Not every paint job needs to look that way. In this case, like I said, I'm going for as high end as I can possibly produce. So what that's going to wind up being is, like I'm sure most of you guys know this, or a lot of you guys have heard this, prep is 90% of the paint job. I like to say prep is 95% of a good paint job, because the better surface that you start with to paint, the better the paint is going to look, or the less work you have to put in to make the paint look good in the end. Step one on the car is assess which body panels need work, because not all the sheet metal in this car is new. About half of it is, the other half is the original panels. They were in various states of disrepair, and they obviously need to be bodyworked. First step is, of course, the car is covered with epoxy primer now. Regardless of the overall panels, the epoxy primer has got to be ready to accept the next layer of primer, because it's going to get several coats of primer. My first step is to give me kind of an overall big picture of where the body is at. You're going to see me go over the car with a DA, 180 grit sandpaper, basically smoothing out the epoxy primer and taking the texture out of the epoxy primer. And yes, every paint job is going to have texture in it. You need to knock that down and get a smooth surface to and put a scratch on the surface for the next paint job to adhere to, or for the next primer job to adhere to. So that's step one. Go over the whole car with just a DA. And yes, for a high-end paint job, I'm still going to use power tools and air sanders as much as I possibly can. You don't want to do that after a certain point, but I'm not to that point yet. So after that's done, next step is, once I've assessed where I need to do the body work, we're going to start on the body work. And face it, that's filler, that's Bondo. I've got areas on the car that are going to need to be have filler in them, just to fix the basic old panel dents and things like that. Once that's done, then I'm going to go over the car with a coat of, probably, I'm trying to decide whether to use high build primer or just regular primer for that coat, because at that point, that's when I start assessing what do I need to do to the car to really make everything straight, make everything level. And at that point, once that's done, then the power tools are going to basically almost stop, and then the hand sanding really starts. That's with the blocks. And yes, some areas it's still hand sanding, because you know your hands can still tell you a lot. But then again, your hand's going to lie, and the block is going to tell you things that your hand can't. So it'll be a combination of that. At that point, I go with more Bondo and fix the areas that I missed the first time. At that point, another coat, or spot coat at least, of the areas I had to fix. Then the block sanders come out, and we start leveling the surface. And at that point, I switch to high build primer. And high build primer is a polyester. It's basically Bondo out of a spray gun. At least one, two, probably two coats of high build primer, sanding in between, blocking in between, and again, assess the surface. When the body's close, and I really think that it's close, at that point, a lot of guys will break out guide coat. Now, I use guide coat. I've used guide coat in the past, but I'm going to try something different this time. I'm going to see if this works. Instead of guide coat, when I've got the primer close to the point where I think it's ready, I'm going to shoot the car with black base. Basically, it's the color part of a two-stage paint. So the base coat, I'm going to shoot the car with black base, one coat, and then I'm again break out the block sanders and go over it. And I'm probably going to knock a good chunk of that black off, but it's going to act like guide coat, and that's going to tell me where my problem areas are. If I need to fix those, I can fix those. At that point, another coat of black base and lighter sanding. When that looks good, I think at that point, I can probably really start thinking about final paint. Let's talk about sandpaper for a second. In each of these, I guess you could call it stages of the bodywork, my sandpaper grits are going to start off, well, at this point, nothing on the car is going to see anything heavier than 120 grit, and that's the areas I'm actually using Bondo on. I'm done with 80 grit at this point. I'm really to the point where, and there's no real big dents to fix. There's just door dings and little things like that that the body hammer just couldn't flatten out. And when I'm talking filler, I'm really talking skim coats. Nothing on this car is going to be thicker. You're not even going to see anything an eighth of an inch. Everything on this car is going to be thinner than that by a bunch. Probably a 1/16 is what I'm shooting for as a maximum filler thickness. So it's essentially skim coats. So anything heavier than 120, say you use 80 grit, you can knock through that skim coat so quick that you basically just took off everything you're trying to put on. So I'm going to just knock the high spots off with 120. And then the car itself right now is seeing 180 grit. And I'll pretty much stick with 180 on the power sanders and 240 by hand or by block. And that will prep the car for the first round of primer. And once that round is on, I will continually move up in numerical grade of sandpaper. So if 240 is the first finish here, after the round of primer, the next is going to be a 320 or 360. After that, 400, and then I start doing the 600s and above when I'm really down to the point of ready for final paint, because I'm not really looking to remove material at that point. I'm really looking at just taking out the last of the just subtle waves. Okay, did that make any sense? So let's start off with just going over the car with the DA and just knocking the shine off of the epoxy primer. Now that I've hit most of the car with the DA. I had to do some hand sanding on some areas, but I've got a pretty good idea of the areas I need to look at and I need to address. So let's take a look at the car in general and kind of see where I'm at. I have already started the first round of Bondo, so you're going to see the car with a little Bondo on it. It's okay. Let's take a look. So we'll start off with the rear quarter here, and just a quick recap. This is a new quarter, so I'm not thinking that there's going to be really a whole lot of, hopefully no straightening, just leveling and smoothing on this quarter. The entire roof is new, same deal. It may have, just regular sheet metal stamping waves in it, whatnot, that on a normal paint job would not be a problem. On this one, obviously, I'm going to go through and level it as best I can. All right, where are we at? Driver's door is original. It does have, it's straight, but there are some door dings here and there along the body line here. This area right here, I did have, this is one of the areas where I did the door gaps, so I'm filling that. And just, again, this is a skim coat, and when this is all said and done, there's going to be basically almost no Bondo in there. So this door, and being original, actually did have a little bit of rusticles kind of right around the mirror. So that'll all get filled in. Other than that, this door, disregard the fingerprints on that. I was working on the door handles and door panels. This fender, new. So again, we're probably not looking at having to body work much of it, just straighten it. Hood. You guys, it's been a while back, but I think you guys remember that this is not a fiberglass formula hood, because the fiberglass formula hood that I had was absolute junk. So this hood is, although it doesn't sound like it, is the original Firebird metal hood. I just grafted the scoops onto it. I'm just doing the final filleting around the scoops. And when I sandblasted this hood, as happens a lot of time, I did get just a little bit of waffling. This is not deep. Again, the thickest this Bondo is along here might be a 32nd of an inch, but you can feel it. So I'm just leveling the flatter areas of the hood. Won't have to do a whole lot of work on the nose. We'll get to that shortly. I have started some sanding, as you can see, in the fillet areas on the hood. Still working on that, and I'll get to this a little bit later. This fender is original. It did have a little bit of damage right in this area. It's real small, right around the wheel lip. And one of the biggies on this one, which I'm going to show a little bit of detail on getting this straight. This area right here is where the 71 scoop cutout used to be, which I filled in. So this is actually me covering my sheet metal work. Again, the thickest this is right here, probably, it's definitely maximum 1/16 of an inch. Probably not even that much. But this is part of the area that will just have to be flattened and leveled. So I'm working on that. This door, reskinned, should be in pretty good shape. It's going to have a few areas, like anything, it's going to need a little bit of work, but very minor. This quarter is new, and again, same as the other quarter, mostly just leveling. Back here on the deck lid, this is the original deck lid. It did have some kind of weird little rust areas, which they're fixable, and that's why I went ahead and saved this and didn't replace it. But I did have to do some work on the edges here, because I did have to kind of fix my gaps on the deck lid. So my filler panel is new here, and the deck lid is pretty much ready at this point for its first coat of primer, so I can see where I need to continue with it. Tail panel is new, and almost all of that's covered anyway. So by either the bumper or there's a fiberglass filler panel in here. Only thing that's going to really show is going to be the lower valence down there, and all of that's new. So don't think I'll need a whole lot of body work on that. One of the things you guys might see is, like, I've got spots here where I've actually sanded through back to bare metal. Yes, I sanded the epoxy primer off, because sometimes that happens. Not to worry, the car will get at least 2, probably 3 coats of either a regular 2K primer or a 2K high build primer. So basically primer is going to go back and cover those spots. Getting burn throughs like that at this stage is inevitable when you're using heavier grit sandpaper like I am. I guess one last spot to think of, the roof to quarter interface. I've already started on that. It's close. I'm just kind of hitting the last spots here to get that nice and smooth. So working on all of this, let's sit down and see kind of the steps I'm going to go through to fix this part of the front fender. Now I'm going to work on this section right here. It's actually, it's a pretty simple, uh, although it can be kind of deceptive. Flat surfaces sometimes are kind of the hardest ones to get right, especially if they're over a large area. We're going to go ahead and work on this. And what I'm using is I'm going to start off with my air file just to knock down, like I said, just to knock down the bulk of it without digging in to it. And when I'm satisfied with that, then I'm going to switch over, and I've got a series of sanding blocks. This is an aluminum sanding board. It's rigid, and it'll work good on a flat surface here because I don't need it to have to conform to any, slightly convex surface. And I'll alternate between that and my this is a little bit of a flex, not much, but a little bit, but it's got just a hair of give to it. So those are going to be my three kind of main blocks I'm using. And just to knock this down, this probably is not going to be the only Bondo application. I'll probably get to the point where I need to, kind of go over it again, but a much, just another thin layer just to even it and blend it. So let's get started. Wondered what was in the way. The tire's in the way. Let's try this again. All right, now let me put my Mickey Mouse ears on so the noise doesn't get to me. Again, I'm using 120 grit on this. I could use 80, but on 80, I stand the chance of it being just a little too aggressive and knocking down too much material. So let's see how it works. Not going to be able to talk a lot during this. I kind of mixed this load of Bondo a little bit hot. And I don't have a whole lot of working time with it. As you can see right here in the center. And I'm going thin. Yeah. See, I hate when I get a little goober like that. I'm going thin on this because I'd rather sneak up. I'm not a big fan of just glopping it on and, sanding and sculpting until you get down where you want. I'd rather put it on thin and build the layers up slowly. And this is just to finish that little area right there. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because the tendency is to want to just keep working this. So I'm going to stop right there. The power tools are gone, and I'm down to what I'm hoping is final shaping. And I'm down to my flat board. And as I get here, you can kind of see as I go along, I don't know how hard, whether you can see it on camera or not, but as I run my board along, I'm doing a crosshatch pattern. And this shows that the scratches from the board are here, here, and of course I've gone back to bare metal here. And so I basically filled in that little bit of a low spot. It gets better as it comes down here. I do have one right there. I'm going to have to kind of build and I can feel that. I can build that just a little bit, but I just need to knock this down a little bit more. And believe it or not, this is actually nowhere close to being ready. But this is round one. This is bodywork. This is not final shaping. I'm going to have to get a coat after I knock this down right here. I'm going to have to get a coat of primer on this because you can't, once you get 2 or 3 coats of Bondo on here, there's absolutely no way. There's enough surface differences in just the feel of bare metal, the feel of primer, and the feel of Bondo that you can't. You can use, now one thing I like about this board is It's flat here, but you know what? It's flat here too. So sometimes I can take that board, flip it upside down, stick it against. It's got to be a flat surface, and you want a flat surface. I can stick it against here and tell I'm good. I'm good. A hint of a low spot back here. I'm good. And this right here, I can't see that. I can feel it just a little bit, but I can't even see it against this flat edge right here. It's that close. As I come up, so a little bit more work here. I'm going to fill this little corner right down here, and I'm going to put some primer just on this panel so we can see it. While we're concentrating on this lower portion of the fender, I did something else while I was here because, well, I'm here and it needed to be done anyway. I did find just a hint of a low spot right up here at the end of the fender. So I went ahead and filled that, and that feels good. I've got one little spot there I've got to finish because that's just kind of filling in holes. But also, if you can see, right along here, I've got Bondo right along this body line. What happened is, and this is really typical, original fender, but this door is a reskin. And I've got a much crisper body line on the door than I do on the fender. The fender was really rounded off, and it was almost indistinct, I guess you might be able to say. And the way to fix that is you come along and basically just fill in and create that body line again. Now, this shows a sharp line. I'm not going to leave it a sharp line. I'm going to match this body line here. And we can see it a little bit better on the driver's side. So again, this is a reskin door. It's got a good, crisp, straight body line. New quarter, crisp, straight body line. But let's look at the driver's side. So replacement quarter, nice, crisp body line. Again, nice, crisp body line. And if we go up to the replacement fender here, I've got a nice, crisp body line. But this is an original door. So let's take a look at the door from kind of an oblique angle. See if we can show that. So you see my crisp body line at the quarter, but if you look down the door, it looks kind of really round and kind of, I guess you could say, mushy. And then it gets crisp again up at the fender. That's just like on the passenger side. And how I'm going to fix that, same thing I did on the passenger fender. I'm going to come along, since I've got door dings to fix anyway, I'm going to come along and basically just reshape this entire body line on this the entire door, front to back, the same way. Just fill it with Bondo, and once I get to this point, we'll get into that a little bit more. But that's what I was doing on the passenger side fender, in addition to my previous bodywork. Guys, I can't believe I have to say this, but this is YouTube land, and it's inevitable. I'm about to shoot a coat of primer on what I just worked on. It's for YouTube purposes only, so you can kind of see the progress. It's a horrible tape job. Yes, and there's going to be somebody in the comments that says, "Oh, you don't know how to tape, you're an idiot." Well, yeah, I'm an idiot, but this is strictly so you guys can see the progress and kind of see the steps. And the car will go back in the paint booth very shortly, and it'll be proper primer and sanding and primer sanding. But this upcoming is strictly for you guys, because you can kind of see what I was talking about. All right, so here we go. I'm going to see if I can hold the camera on one side and paint with the other. Let's see if this works. All I'm doing is I'm using, this is 2K high build primer, thinned way down. I don't even know what tip I've got on this. This is my little detail gun because I'm just doing a small area. Let's see how this works. Let's see if I can do this without screwing it up completely. I just did that because there's a little bare spot there. That's all. All right. Let's let that sit and flash for about 5 minutes. We'll come in and get another coat. Well, I'm up to coat number 3, and as you can see, you can still see the Bondo in there. And what happens is the Bondo tends to absorb a lot of the initial part of the primer coat because it's kind of rough and porous. So let's go with coat number 3 and see how we can build this up, and maybe we can kind of hide some of that. I've just got the last coat, I should say last, the final coat for this session on. I've been hunting around the shop for my light. Can't find it, but I want to kind of get as much of a close-up as I can so you can kind of see how, the primer starts filling in the Bondo and just kind of starts blending it. And it just takes a little bit to build up and fill that in. And you can kind of see it flattens it out quite a bit. I wish I could find my light. And you can kind of see it's still got a lot of work to go, but this one is it's really close to being ready for leveling and blocking. Well, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Bodywork is well on the way. That's bodywork as opposed to blocking, leveling, paint prep. And I separate those two. So let's see, out of the original panels, the deck lid is ready for next primer coat. Passenger fender, just about there. I've got one little spot left to work on that. Hood and driver's door. At that point, then essentially the entire car is at, for lack of a better term, the entire car is at baseline. And so I've got new panels that should be kind of straight. And then I've got old panels that are also kind of straight. And then I can move on from there. I finished out the day by getting the paint booth out of storage, and I've got it sitting here. Not quite up yet, but it'll get there. And I got a little tip for you. After you do some painting or priming or whatever you do, don't get in a hurry to rush home, because I did when I painted that fender and I forgot to clean out my paint gun. So I'm gonna have a little fun trying to get that cleaned out. I also forgot to seal the lid on the high build primer can, but I think that's gonna be okay. So don't get in too much of a hurry. Take care of your tools like I didn't. I certainly appreciate everybody tuning in every week. What am I supposed to say? Please like, share, subscribe, notify, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. We'll see you guys next week. Everybody, have a great day.